Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Neal Stulberg. I am the Director of Orchestral Studies here at the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music and the Artistic Director of the Lowell Milken Center for Music of American Jewish Experience. I welcome you all here in the hall. I welcome you all on live stream. This is a very, very special afternoon in celebration of a very, very special man. Yehudi Wyner is an eminent American composer, pianist, teacher, Pulitzer Prize winner. He has written for the world's finest musicians. He has performed with the world's finest musicians. He has influenced generations of musicians, including me, actually. And we decided that in celebration of his 95th year, we would have a celebration, a week-long residency, where he would interact with our students, coach his own music, coach regular repertoire music, interact with student composers, and also give us an insight into the music of his father, who was also a very great composer and to whose music he has been extremely devoted for his whole life. It's been quite a week. Yehudi and his wife, Susan Deveni Weiner, flew in on Wednesday. Thursday and Friday, we held all of our activities off the campus at the home of my colleague David Lefkowitz and his wife Lori. We were able to return to the campus this weekend, and today is truly something that I think you'll all enjoy. Just a very quick summary for those of you, particularly watching online, who may not have access to the program, which is on QR code and it's on our website, schoolofmusic.ucla.edu. But very quickly, today's program features only music of Yehudi Wyner. 3 works on the first half, 2 works on the second half, varied in terms of decade of composition, from when he was a very young composer to a more mature composer, varied in terms of mood and affect and instrumentation also. And the performers of all 5 pieces are almost entirely, not completely, but almost entirely are UCLA students or UCLA adjacent. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to give you a very quick summary of what the program is, and then I'm going to turn over this microphone to Yehudi Wyner, who is going to introduce each piece. We'll have the pleasure of hearing from the composer himself. The first piece on the program is for a quartet, violin, clarinet, cello, and piano from 1981. It's called Tanz and Meisele, meaning dance and story. He can tell you more about it. The performers are Janice Hu, violin, Yijin Wang, clarinet, Peter Walsh, cello, and Gabi Saipen, piano. That is about 12, 13 minutes. After that, we hear 2 beautiful psalms that Yehudi wrote in 1950 for baritone and piano. The baritone is our master's graduate, Jared Jones, and I will be playing piano. The first half ends with something completely different for horn, trumpet, trombone, and 2 percussionists from 1991 called Trapunto Junction, about 15-minute piece. Hornist Vincent Gerardo, Emma Breen trumpet, Ryan Heisiger trombone, Frankie Peacock percussion, Erica Howe percussion, again, all of our students. We'll then take an intermission. And after intermission, there are two works. The first is called West of the Moon, for guitar, mandolin, flute, oboe, violin, and cello. How's that for a combination? Will Adams, flute, Tina Shigeyama, oboe, Rebecca Bierstein, violin, Isabel Fromm, cello, Peter Yates, mandolin, Joseph Douglas, guitar. And then finally, we end with music from a work for the theater called The Mirror, for violin, clarinet, double bass, percussion, narrator, soprano, and baritone soloists from 1972. Rebecca Bierstein, violin, Jacob Freeman, clarinet, Skylar Lee, double bass, Frankie Peacock, percussion, Iris Malkin, mezzo-soprano, Jerry Jones, baritone. So that's about 25 minutes, that one. West of the Moon, 13, 14, I think, something like that. So this has been an amazing week because Yehudi Wyner has worked with such care and exacting love, really, with all of our students. And, you know, when I was asked to write something about this program, I started by saying, in music and in life, we do well to honor our elders. And I turn the microphone over to my friend Yehudi Wyner.
You know the word bloviating? You know, the Italian version of that is chiacchiere, chiacchierare, just to gossip together. First of all, to be 95, that'll happen in 2 weeks or so. And the story going around about someone who was turned 95 was, how do you feel about it? Oh, to be 94 again. Of course, I'm flattered, honored, and above all, confirmed and encouraged by an event like this in which considerable resources have been put to produce this event, and also to entrust me to deliver my opinions about what people are doing. You know, how my music should go and how other music should go, and their music. It is opinions. It's not necessarily authoritative. It's not guaranteed to be correct or the best. It is simply the opinion of an individual who feels that he has, after a lot of experience, the ability to improve the overall projection of a work of art. That's different from saying, you got to do it this way and that's the only way to do it. And there are plenty of people in our field who do that. They have one way, they see it. There used to be a movement about how to play Bach and how to play certain things, how to bow it, how short the notes should be and all the rest. It was a fashion, a fad, everybody loved it, and it's passed, thank heaven. There have been fads, for example, in various kinds of music, in aesthetics. Serial music. Now, serial music can be very, very generous and very general. When it came out of Princeton for a long time, it was absolute. It was another absolute, the so-called pre-compositional schemes. Another was minimalism, in particular of a certain kind of minimalism. And people get on bandwagons and they lose their identity. They go for the style and forget about what the essence of our work is. Our work is to reach other people by delving into ourselves and also with the accumulation of the history that we know, the works of art that we admire. We put that all together. But above all, the ultimate result or the ultimate intention is, how do I speak to you, to you, to you, each individual? Another thing that I'm thrilled about is something I spoke about a few days ago. There was a big celebration in Boston of my birthday on Sunday a week ago. And the celebration was focused on my music, and everybody was congratulating and I was asked to make a speech. Eventually I said, look, this celebration is, in a way, for me, but understand there's something much more profound about this celebration. It is simply the idea that we have all come together to talk about, to listen, to experience each other. Music, which has no substance, just goes in one ear and stays there, maybe the other ear as well. And the community of belief in something so benign and so spiritual and having such connection with the past, that's the message. Now, I've bloviated enough. I will talk about the first piece on the program. Tanz und Meisele. Nice titles. You know, in the published and recorded version, it says Tanz und Meisele in Yiddish. Tanz means dance, and Meisele is a little story. Well, I conceived of it as Tanz and Meisele, with a connection with the English language as well. And it was dedicated to my father, 1981. Where did I get the titles from? Well, about 1930, my father wrote 3 preludes for piano. One was called Prelude, the second was called Tanz, and the third was called Meisele. Meisele was dedicated to me. I was all of 1 or 2 years old. They didn't expect me to play it ever. But when I grew up, I played all 3, recorded them. And who do you think I recorded them for? It's the Milken Foundation, which has been a very important element of permanently putting responsible and beautiful performances on disc so that, so that it could be known a little more far and wide than just for an immediate audience. So this piece was required. I was asked to write a piece by the Aeolian String Quartet, Aeolian Chamber Group in New York. And the director asked me if I could write a piece with some Jewish content. He asked the right guy, because I said, of course. I said, of course, with confidence, even though I had never written a really thoroughly so-called Jewish piece. I didn't really, my father would often be asked, what is Jewish music? What is it? He'd say, I don't really know. And what is good Jewish music? He says, there's no such thing. There's either good music or bad music. And it's hard to define, but I undertook to do the job with the same ensemble that commissioned me. And it had a lot of figures and shapes and colors that you would find in klezmer music or in Eastern European folk music. That was the stuff I knew something about. Klezmer music, not so much, but other things, cantorial and the Prokofiev pieces and the pieces from St. Petersburg, which by Milner and other composers. And so all the things, all the elements, rhythmic, melodic, which may sound folky or derived, I made them up. And the piece was performed beautifully at Lincoln Center. My father was with me when it was performed. He said, "Why do you put in your piece the slow piece, a little bit strange, at the end? Why not put the vigorous first movement in vigorous fast movement first?" And I said, "I don't really know, Papa." It was the last new piece of mine that he heard before he died. So the piece has a lot of significance for me. I don't think there's any need to say any more. pleasure working with them and trying to get nuances that, as a performer, I'd had a lot of experience with, and they got a lot of it, a great deal of the feeling of the piece, of my thoughts. The next offering is or are two psalms for piano and voice, or voice and piano, as you like. By the way, it was said by somebody to me the other day that, oh, how unusual, you know, a son who is so respectful and so diligent in honoring his father's memory and doing things like that. And I thought to myself, gee, it doesn't seem so unusual to me. And the model for me is Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, the son of Bach, who actually is responsible for saving most of the Bach archive. The other two sons, Johann Christian and I don't remember the other name at the moment, but they sold off the few manuscripts they had, so they're lost forever, largely. The huge number of cantatas, which is the main work of Bach, are available and in our hands and in our culture. Without the son, who himself became the most eminent composer in Europe during his time, a man who profoundly influenced Haydn and Mozart and Beethoven and an entire generation of composers. Now, these two psalms were written in 1950. I was 21. And they were written for a festival at school. I was at Yale. The reason I was at Yale was because Paul Hindemith, the great German composer, was there teaching, and I loved his music from the time I was about 15. It was the only school I applied to, the only place I wanted to go, and the only person I wanted to study with. So there was a little festival in 1950 or 51, and I wrote these two songs. I had a close companion who was a mezzo-soprano, and I thought of her voice, and that was the thought. I picked biblical texts at that time in the King James edition and set them. And I have to confess to you, this sounds like arrogance, but I am exceedingly accepting and even proud of these pieces. I taught a lot of composition, whatever that meant, to teach composition. And youngsters would come to me and say, "Oh," I would say, "What have you got? What have you done this week?" And they say, "Well, I wanted to bring you this piece. It's an old piece. I don't write like this anymore." I said, "When did you do it?" "Oh, last week." And I wondered to myself, really, they didn't really commit themselves to it. Wasn't not important to them. These pieces are in my consciousness as legitimate and as personal, expressive as anything I have ever written. And we're talking about something that's 76, 74 years old. It's 3 generations or so, or maybe more. Anyway, the estimable, remarkable Neal Stulberg is going to be playing the piano for this, which sends me over the moon. I'm so honored. The first psalm is Psalm 119, a psalm of penitence. The second one is a psalm of triumph. Hallelujah. It's Psalm 66. That psalm had some popularity. It was sung all over the world by people like William Warfield and George Shirley and others. But the first person who sang them was a student at New England Conservatory, a mezzo-soprano, at that time not a very good musician, but with a glorious voice. Her name was Rosalind Elias, who became legendary mezzo or alto at the Metropolitan Opera.
chosen the way of faithfulness. Thine ordinances have I set before me. I cleave unto thy testimonies. O Lord, put me not to shame. I will run the way of thy commandments. For thou dost enlarge my heart. Hallelujah, 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 shout unto God of the earth. Sing praises, sing praises, sing praise unto the glory of his name. Make his name glorious. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Say unto God, how tremendous is thy work through the greatness of thy power. Shall thine enemies dwindle away before thee? Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. All the earth shall worship thee, and shall sing praises unto thee, and shall sing praises to thy name.
We jump ahead for 40 years. That's 1950. Around 1950, I was asked by the Boston Symphony chamber players to write a piece for their principal brass players, trumpet, horn, trombone, and percussion. The percussion player was one of the world's great timpanists, Vic Firth was his name. They told me they wanted to take the piece when it was ready, on tour, and Vic said, you know, I can't drag along a bunch of timpanis, so write for me some things for rototoms or other smaller drums. Well, I was in Italy on a residence, and I just followed my own selfish instincts, and I forgot to write for rototoms or anything that Vic Firth, this great performer, could use. I wrote for mallets, for xylophone and marimba, and the brass players. They were not happy with the fact that the piece itself was not something they liked very much. They hurried with their first performance, and Vic Firth wanted to participate, so he stood on stage with a small drum and went tap, 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 while a brilliant member of the orchestra in percussion section, played the rest. Well, it wasn't a terribly successful premiere, and the piece did not go on tour. That summer at Tanglewood, where I was teaching, I had the privilege and pleasure of coaching a very accomplished young group of players, fellows at the Tanglewood, in the piece. I had a whole summer to work with them. And at the end of the summer, we performed it. It was a sensational performance. And the nicest thing about that was that the person, when we started the rehearsal, there was a very unusual horn player. She was a girl of 18. Someone 18 wasn't usually accepted at Tanglewood at that time. And when she came to the first rehearsal, she was playing low notes that had nothing to do with what I wrote. He said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, those notes we don't have those on the horn." I said, "Of course you have them on the horn. I've tested them out with players who could do it." "Well, I don't like them." I said, "Well, you know, your job here is really to try to do the best the composer has in mind." She says, "Oh, shucks." She didn't say, "Oh, shucks." She used a colloquial term. And as the summer went on, she became the most passionate devotee of the music. At the end of the summer, she said she never wanted it to stop. So, Trapunto, what does Trapunto mean? I wanted to call it Tuxedo Junction, but the name has been taken. I just like the idea. Trapunto is a quilt. And I felt I was quilting and darning the various sections together in this piece. Not really, but the idea was fun to think of it as a quilt. So there you are. And I must say it's radically different from most of the other pieces on the program. There's a kind of violence and noisiness about this that you will condemn me for.
Mm-hmm.
ask, has the convalescence worked? Are you recovered? Okay, the next piece, West of the Moon, a very, I think, poetic title. And the title is based on a fable, a German or Swedish fable about a farmer who sees in the stream on his property a group of swans who descend to swim in it. And he goes to have a look and he sees all along the bank are swan coats of feathers. In the lake, in the river, are beautiful maidens. And he abducts one of them. And eventually, with persuasion, he makes her his wife. They have children, and it seems to be a happy life as it is. One day, one of their children opened a wall and found this coat of swan feathers. And so the secret was out. And now his wife confessed that indeed she was partly swan, and she longed to go home. So she put on her swan outfit and flew away. The man was in despair. He longed for her. He searched the world over to try to find her. And eventually he stumbled on some old guy who said, "Oh, the swan, yes, yes." He says, "You must go to a place west of the moon where you'll find a castle," which he did. He negotiated with his former wife or wife and her father, and they arranged that she would come back as his wife and return to the castle once a year. Now, what's that got to do with the composition? The Italian word is niente. Nothing whatsoever. But the reason we adopted that is because the name of the ensemble that commissioned me is Cygnus. Not sickness, but Cygnus, swan. And it was actually motivated by the great guitarist David Starobin. Starobin is someone I knew since he was 17 or 18 years old. For all those years until when I wrote this piece about 5 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that, he begged me to write a piece for him, and I kept saying, I don't know diddly squat about guitar. He said, never mind, just write me a piece. And finally, I got a commission for guitar and somehow for mandolin as well, and I wrote. And they rehearsed, and they did several performances. Oh, the loss of whatever it was, David decided not to perform the piece. You know, I wrote it for him. But he conducted it. He loves it, I think. I love it. It's an intricate piece, and as I say, it has this unusual combination of guitar and mandolin, pluckers, both of them. And all I can say is, don't think of the story, just think of the music. response to that is, wow. It's so challenging for them, for each of the instruments, and above all, to know the piece well enough to actually hear the fact that it's not notes as items, but is harmony. The harmony is there all the time, and it needs to be, when you're working on it, you need to hear things very slowly, so that what they call simultaneity, when things arrive together, makes some sense. This is the way I write, what I intend. Good comment. Well, we're going into another realm now. The Mirror. Isaac Bashevis Singer, who wrote The Mirror, the play, was, of course, the eminent novelist and known as a remarkably independent guy who won the Nobel Prize despite the fact that he wrote in Yiddish, or not certainly because, but his art was unique. He somehow, in his work, he recaptured the life of the shtetl, of the ghetto, and its people, but also infused it with a knowledge of, or an inclination to psychologicalize, to penetrate into the psyche of these people, who normally were rather, known as surface. We didn't know about their internal feelings. We knew they were oppressed and sad, and eventually the lucky ones escaped from the Pale. Singer also was interested in things which are normally not discussed in Yiddish literature, namely sexuality, suppressed desires, frustration, fantasies about sex, about escape, also judgment about what does it mean for a wife unfulfilled has to put up with a husband who devotes his life to the Torah. Devotes his life all the time. So this story is about a woman named Cyril, and she's in that situation of being very frustrated and very unhappy. And what happens is that she fantasizes, and at some point she looks into a mirror. And there she sees, or imagines, she sees some creature, an ugly, deformed creature named Urmiza, who somehow allures her with his apparent sexuality. And what Singer was looking for was what the effect of this would be on the rest of the community. In any case, the play is built around that thesis. There is also a subplot, a friend of maybe a servant or a loving friend named Yenta, a good title, who also fantasizes about, she's a rather elderly spinster, but she fantasizes about a wedding. And that becomes a part of the play as she enacts, in her mind at least, the wedding ceremony and its consequence. And then, also, during the time that Cyril is looking into the mirror and seeing this creature, she enters into what amounts to hell. A form of hell, a form of what we, probably a psychic hell, surely. And at a point, she's in the court of, I forget who the name is for the moment, but you'll hear some music where I parody the court of the King of Hell as music from, let's say, you would find in a Western movie, which had ladies in a Near Eastern palace, semi-clothed and waving big fronds of palms on the monarch. A certain kind of music which is sort of silly. In any case, there's also Another interesting character brought in by Singer. It's called the Jew of Babylon. Sabbatot Tzvi, a false messiah, a creep, possibly, well, really a sexual pervert, and a guy who is possessed of superstitious beliefs. How to cure Cyril of her condition? He has to search every part of her body. Or make an incantation of some sort around some sort of a candle burning or something. And so the superstitious aspect of that population is also emphasized. Now, in the end, Singer, I think, brought the conclusion of this play to a very, very flimsy end. And I remember the director and I confronted him when he came up to see a performance or a rehearsal. Mr. Singer, we feel the third act really doesn't resolve the situation. Oh, boys, said he, you have hypnotized yourself into thinking that it is not good. And I think he was mistaken. In any case, 2 years later or so, a play was produced on Broadway called Yenta by Isaac Bashevis Singer. And I suspect, I didn't see it, but I suspect it was a modification of The Mirror, but maybe resolving the end more successfully. The music is something I have never done before, or perhaps after. I'm not ashamed of it, I just adore this. It came very quickly, was done at Yale. The little ensemble that we had was up in the balcony, right over the stage. Actually, the Yale Repertory Theater at that time was done in a church. And the whole atmosphere of it was extraordinary. And the fact that it didn't end well it didn't matter really to us. Anyway, I feel blessed in a sense that this music came to me and that it has been performed, and by the way, is beautifully performed and gorgeously recorded for an institution known as the Milken Foundation. And as a matter of fact, this recording, the recording of The Mirror, won a Grammy. So, not so bad. Enjoy. Yeah, I have to go up on stage too. Okay. You understand that the music for this has been sort of, it's messy in a way. It's been thrown together from fragments which really were meant to illuminate a scene or precede a scene or comment on some dramatic action. It was never meant to be a continuous piece. I wish it had been, but in the meantime, this presentation will be messy. And I'll try to clarify what goes on. The playing begins with the demons welcome. This, of course, would not happen at the beginning of the play because the demons actually entered somewhat later with Hurmiza and the other creeps. But I wanted to put together a kind of overture, and so the overture is a gluing together of a number of different scenes done rather continuously. It begins with this klezmer-like Freilach, the demons welcome, and proceeds to home, a reminiscence of what home was like when things were peaceable and there wasn't this kind of unrest. That's a set of variations. And it's followed then by 3 dances from really much later in the play, 3 wedding dances. And it finally finishes, this whole overture sort of thing, finishes with what I think of as goulash music. It finishes, you have to picture being in Hungary and sitting and eating a plate of goulash, and up to your table comes a gypsy violinist to encourage you to give tips and also to eat a little bit more goulash. So that's the overture. Then I will intrude on your patience and again say something about the continuation. So that's merely the overture. And a lot of that music, as I pointed out before, really relates to some things that much later in the play. We proceed directly into some of the play now. As she's looking into the mirror, an incantation is pronounced. And I'm going to speak during the intonation. I will actually speak over the music, and then, surprising thing, she calls Hurmiza, and you'll see how she calls him. So the incantation, very softly, not too slow. Swift is the moon, swift is the wind. Come deep is the ditch, come black sheep. Come black cat, come within reach. Strong is the lion, mute is the fish. Reach from your distance and take your dish. And when Ketev Mariri heard this spell, he came riding on a hoop, his nose red with fire. He had a retinue of demons riding after him, one on a stick, one on a hedgehog, and one on a snake. One performed somersaults, another jumped over his tail. And when Zlicha the witch saw Ketev Mariri, she fell at his feet and cried, "Take me, my love, and do with me as you please." Who do you think that introduces? That's the bad guy, the creep, the pedophile, the pervert, and a man of considerable power. He managed somehow to persuade people that his superstitious garbage was useful, and he's the one that undressed Cyril and searched her every part of her body in order to find out what was her condition. Why did she allow herself to be so possessed by desire? So Cyril does find herself somewhere or sometime in the play. We have a depiction of Asmodeus' court, the king of hell's court. is meant to be alluring. They have nice music there. Now, a very short cut. The Jew of Babylon decides he's going to do a magic, he's going to do something in a circle over incense, supposedly to purify the young lady. It's a shortcut. Earlier that Yenta was also involved, and Yenta, as I said, was a spinster fantasizing about a marriage of her own. She imagines a beautiful wedding dress for herself. I tried to give a suggestion of what that wedding dress was like. Yenta imagines further, and she speaks to an imaginary consort of musicians. She says, "Come, my beloved," speaking to an imaginary chosn. "Don't be shy. Lead me under the canopy. Play, musicians. Drum, drummer. Blind berle. Let's hear the trumpet. Zeinwille. Sound the clarinet. Let there be merriment." The angels are gay in heaven with the king. The wild ox will dance and guy, and Leviathan will sing, blessing bride and blessing bridegroom.
I will bring you a glass of wine. Right, right, la 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 la.
fantasy is too much for Yenta. This whole thing was a fantasy. And she faints. Anyway, this happens close to the end of the play, and as I said, Basheva Singer did not have a successful, convincing conclusion to the play. We concluded that the best thing would be to have the imprisoned characters, imprisoned by their fantasies, imprisoned by their circumstances, escape. And so I wrote a piece called Flight, and it suggests flying, fleeing, and that is the end, really, of our presentation. And as in vaudeville, there has to be music for travel. Travel means get rid of everybody on the stage and conclude the evening.